In these hills, a person's worth was measured by what their hands could do. Long before the highway cut through the hollows, before the general store stocked everything in shiny cans, the people of the Ozarks lived on skills handed down at the woodpile, the washpot, and the front porch. Skills that took a lifetime to master and are now slipping away with the old-timers who still carry them. Number 13 on this list could keep a whole family in sweetness for a year, using nothing but a hollow log. And number 1, mountain folk trusted it more than any doctor for well over 100 years. These 25 skills built an entire way of living, self-reliant, patient, and proud. When the last hands that know them fall still, they are gone for good. Let's count down, starting with number 25. Number 25. Reading the weather by the signs was the Mountain Farmer's Almanac, written not on paper, but in the world itself. Before radio forecasts crackled into the hollows, an Ozark man read the sky, the animals, and the plants the way a scholar reads a book. A ring around the moon meant rain within 3 days. Cows lying down in the pasture, a storm on the way. When the oaks turned their pale leaf bottoms to the wind, everyone knew to bring the washing in. Old-timers counted the fogs of August to predict the snows of January. This knowledge came from a lifetime of noticing what the careless never saw. Today, a phone tells us the forecast in seconds, and the signs go unread, fading with the men and women who once staked a whole harvest on them. Number 24. Whittling was the quiet craft of every mountain porch, a pocket knife and a scrap of cedar turning idle hands into useful ones. An Ozark man was rarely without his knife, and in the long evenings after chores, he carved whatever the family needed: tool handles, wooden spoons, toys for the young ones, whistles, and little chains cut from a single stick to show off his skill. Children learned early, handed a dull blade and a soft piece of pine, warned always to cut away from themselves. A good whittler could shape a working button or a set of dominoes without a single nail or drop of glue. It was patience made visible. Today the toys come from a store and the handles come from a factory, and the slow art of making something from nothing but a stick has all but disappeared. Number 23. Corn shuck weaving turned the leftovers of the harvest into things a family used every day. When the corn was pulled and husked, nothing went to waste. The dried shucks were saved in the barn loft, then dampened and braided into chair bottoms tough enough to last 30 years, into mops, hats, horse collars, and scrubbing pads. Grandmothers twisted them into dolls for children who had no other toys, faceless little figures in shuck dresses that became a child's dearest companion. The work was done in winter by the fire, fingers moving without needing to look, the sweet, dusty smell of dried corn filling the cabin. It took years to learn the tension that kept a seat from sagging. Today, the chairs come with plastic webbing and the dolls come in boxes, and the patient braiding of a humble corn shuck lives on only in a few craft fairs and the hands of the very old. Number 22. Making a broom from broomcorn kept every cabin floor clean and every hearth swept. Families grew a patch of broomcorn beside the garden, its tall tassels harvested and dried, then bound tight around a hickory or sassafras handle with strong wire or wax twine. The maker soaked the straw to soften it, combed out the seeds, and stitched the broom flat so it swept evenly instead of bunching. A well-made broom cost only the labor and lasted a year of hard use, and a skilled maker could trade them at the store for coffee, sugar, or shoes. Store-bought brooms eventually filled the shelves for a few dimes, and the family broom patch was plowed under. Now the craft survives with a handful of dedicated makers guarding a trade that once stood in every mountain home. Number 21. Water witching or dowsing was how a family found water before anyone drilled a well. The dowser walked the land holding a forked branch of peach or witch hazel, elbows tucked, waiting for the wood to dip toward the ground where water ran beneath. To the believer, it was a gift, passed from father to son, and not everyone had the hands for it. A good dowser was sent for across 3 counties, paid in a meal or a few coins to find the sweet spot before a man spent weeks digging in the wrong place. Skeptics scoffed, but farm after farm was watered on the strength of a bending stick. Whether science or faith, it was knowledge the community trusted with its very survival. Today, well companies bring machines and surveys, and the old dowsers, with their quiet certainty and their forked branches, have nearly all passed on. Number 20. Churning butter was the daily rhythm that turned a family cow into a table full of richness. After the morning milking, the cream was skimmed and left to sour just enough, then poured into the tall crock churn with its wooden dasher. Then came the work, up and down, sometimes for an hour, until the splashing changed to a heavy slosh and flecks of gold gathered on the paddle. Children were handed the dash to keep them busy, and mothers sang rhymes to mark the time. The fresh butter was washed in cold spring water, salted, and pressed into a carved mold, while the leftover buttermilk was drunk cold or saved for biscuits. It was a skill of feel, knowing the exact moment the butter would come. Today, it arrives in foil-wrapped sticks, and the churn sits empty on a porch as decoration. Number 19. Building a worm fence, the zigzagging rail fence that once crossed every Ozark farm, was a craft of the axe and the eye. A man felled straight-grained oak, then split the logs into rails with iron wedges and a wooden maul, reading the grain so the wood opened clean. The rails were stacked in a zigzag, each length locking over the last, no post holes and no nails required, held together by nothing but weight and angle. A good fence turned cattle and hogs and stood for decades against the weather. Raising one was often a neighborhood affair, men splitting rails while women cooked, the whole thing a test of strength and know-how. Barbed wire and steel posts eventually replaced the labor, faster and cheaper. Now the graceful old worm fences have rotted back into the ground, and the skill of splitting a true rail has gone with them. Number 18. Bottoming a chair by hand was how mountain families made furniture that outlasted the people who sat in it. A frame of turned hickory or maple was worthless without a seat, and skilled hands wove one from split white oak, hickory bark, or cane, threading the strips over and under in tight herringbone patterns. The weaver kept the material damp so it would shrink drum-tight as it dried, giving a seat that could hold a grown man for a generation. It was close, exacting work, the pattern held entirely in memory, one wrong pass, unraveling an afternoon's labor. Chairs were passed from parents to children, rebottomed when they wore through rather than thrown away. Factory chairs with glued plywood seats eventually made the craft seem slow and old-fashioned. Today, a hand-bottomed chair is a treasure, and the weavers who can still do the work are counted on one hand in many a county. Number 17. Making a white oak basket began not with weaving, but with reading a whole tree. The maker walked the woods until finding a young white oak, straight and free of knots, then felled it and split it down with a froe and mallet into thin, flexible splits, each worked smooth by hand. Only then could the weaving begin, ribs bent into shape and splits woven over and under into egg baskets, feed baskets, and gathering baskets built to carry a bushel without breaking. A well-made oak basket could hold a load of potatoes for 40 years and be handed down still sound. The skill lay in the splitting, in coaxing wood to peel into ribbons of even thickness, a knack that took years to feel in the hands. Cheap wire and plastic containers pushed the baskets aside. Now they sell as antiques, and the makers who can still split a tree true are vanishing. Number 16. Spinning and weaving clothed the mountain family from the sheep's back to the shirt on a child's shoulders. Wool was sheared, washed, and carded into soft rolls, then spun into thread on a wheel that hummed through the winter evenings, the spinner's foot rocking the treadle while her fingers fed the fiber. The thread was dyed with walnut hulls for brown, pokeberry for red, indigo for blue, colors drawn straight from the hills. Then came the loom, a great wooden frame filling a corner of the cabin where cloth was woven inch by patient inch for dresses, coverlets, and linsey-woolsey warm enough for the coldest hollow. A woman might spend a full year turning a flock's wool into a single winter's worth of clothing. Store-bought cloth ended the labor, and the great looms were broken up for firewood or left to rot in barns. Few hands today can still spin a true thread. Number 15. Quilting stitched a family's history into something warm enough to sleep under. Nothing was wasted in the mountains, and every worn-out shirt and outgrown dress was cut into scraps and saved in a bag, then pieced into patterns with names like log cabin, wedding ring, and flying geese. The real work came at the quilting frame, lowered from the ceiling on ropes, where women gathered to stitch the layers in tiny, even rows, laughing and talking through a long winter day. A quilting bee was as much a gathering as a labor, and a bride was often sent to her new home with a stack of quilts made by every woman who loved her. Each held years of work and a story in every square. Cheap factory blankets made quilting a hobby instead of a necessity. Today, the old frames are folded away, and the patient art of the hand-stitched quilt grows rarer with each passing year. Number 14. Tanning a hide turned the skin of a deer or a cow into leather for shoes, harness, and gloves, a skill no self-reliant family could do without. After a hunt or a butchering, the hide was scraped clean of flesh and hair, then worked for days in a solution of oak bark or the animal's own brains, softened and stretched again and again until it turned supple instead of stiff. It was hard, smelly, tedious labor, and a rushed hide dried hard as a board and was ruined. Done right, the leather was strong enough for moccasins, wangs, and hinges, and a good tanner never wanted for trade. Knowing which barks tanned best and how long to work, the skin took years to learn. Cheap manufactured leather and rubber-soled shoes made home tanning pointless. Now the craft survives among a few traditionalists, and the everyday skill of turning a raw hide into leather has all but disappeared from the hills. Number 13. Keeping bees in a bee gum was how mountain families found sweetness in a land that had little sugar and less money. A bee gum was nothing more than a hollow log, usually a section of black gum tree, stood on end with a board on top to keep out the rain. Wild swarms were coaxed inside, and the bees built their comb in the dark of the log just as they would in the forest. In the fall, the keeper robbed the gum, taking honeycomb heavy and golden while leaving enough for the bees to winter over, often working through smoke and stings with bare hands. That honey sweetened everything from cornbread to medicine, and the beeswax made candles and salves. Knowing how to hive a swarm and read the health of a colony took a lifetime. Manufactured hives and cheap sugar ended the old ways, and the hollow log bee gum is now a relic of a sweeter, harder time. Number 12. Keeping food cool without ice was a survival skill built into the very ground of an Ozark farm. Long before electricity reached the hollows, families dug root cellars into the hillside, cool caves of earth, where potatoes, apples, turnips, and jars of canned garden held all winter without spoiling. Better still was the spring house, a small stone building set over a cold, running spring, where crocks of milk, butter, and cream sat in the flowing water and stayed fresh in the hottest July. The temperature never changed, summer or winter, holding steady in the cool of the earth. Building one right meant knowing how water moved and where the ground stayed cold, knowledge earned over generations. A family's whole year of eating depended on it. The refrigerator made the spring house obsolete almost overnight, and today those little stone buildings crumble beside forgotten springs, their ingenious purpose lost to anyone under 70. Number 11. Foraging the wild greens of spring fed mountain families when the winter stores ran low and the garden had not yet come in. As soon as the ground warmed, folks went to the fields and woods with a sack and a knife, gathering the first tender growth. Poke salad was the prize, its young shoots boiled through 2 or 3 changes of water to make it safe, then fried with grease and eggs into a dish that tasted like spring itself. There were dozens of others: dock, lamb's quarters, creasy greens, and dandelion, each with its season and its trick of preparation. Knowing which plant was food and which would sicken you was knowledge with a family's life riding on it, taught by walking the hills at a grandmother's side. Supermarkets full of year-round produce made the old spring foraging a curiosity. Now few can tell a healthful green from a harmful one, and the woods go ungathered. Number 10. Digging sang, wild ginseng, was the mountain skill that put cash money in a poor family's hand when almost nothing else could. Deep in the shaded coves grew the prized root, and every fall the sang diggers went out with a mattock and a keen eye, searching the north-facing slopes for the plant's telltale red berries and 5-leaf prongs. The true diggers followed an unwritten law, taking only mature plants and planting the seeds back so the patch would grow again, a stewardship that kept the ginseng coming for generations. A season's dug and dried root could sell for more than a man earned in weeks of labor, money that bought shoes, taxes, and Christmas. Finding the hidden patches and reading the woods took a lifetime, and diggers guarded their spots like gold. Overharvesting and vanishing forest have made wild ginseng scarce and closely regulated. Today, the old sang diggers and their careful knowledge are nearly gone. Number 9. Making lye soap kept a mountain family and its clothes clean, conjured entirely from waste. All winter, wood ashes were saved in a hopper, and water poured slowly through them, dripped out as lye strong enough to float an egg. That lye was boiled together with saved grease and cracklings from hog killing in a great iron kettle over an outdoor fire, stirred for hours until it thickened into soap. Judging the strength of the lye and the moment the soap came together was a matter of feel and experience, for lye too strong would burn and too weak would never set. Poured into molds and cut into bars, it washed everything from a baby's diapers to a farmer's overalls. It cost nothing but ashes, grease, and labor. Cheap box detergents and pretty store soaps ended the yearly soap making. Now the smell of a soap kettle bubbling in the yard is a memory held by very few. Number 8. Curing and smoking a hog was the cornerstone of survival in the mountains, the skill that carried a family through the winter. Hog killing came with the first hard, cold snap, a day of heavy, communal work when neighbors gathered to help. Nothing was wasted, from the hams and shoulders down to the feet, the fat, and the intestines. The hams and bacon were rubbed thick with salt, sugar, and pepper, packed away for weeks to draw out the moisture, then hung in the smokehouse over a slow fire of hickory and sassafras for days until they cured deep and dark. Done right, a ham would keep a full year without a lick of refrigeration and taste better for the aging. Done wrong, a family lost its meat and went hungry. That knowledge of salt, smoke, and time took years to master. Refrigeration and the grocery meat counter ended the old smokehouse, and few now know the craft that once meant the difference between a fed winter and a hungry one. Number 7. Making apple butter in the big copper kettle was an all-day ritual that filled a farm with the smell of autumn. Bushels of apples were peeled, cored, and cooked down with cider in a great kettle hung over an open fire, and from sun up to sundown, someone had to stir, always stir, with a long wooden paddle so the thickening butter would never scorch. Family and neighbors took turns at the paddle, sharing the labor and the gossip, while sugar, cinnamon, and cloves went in near the end. The butter cooked down dark and thick and sweet enough to spread on winter biscuits until the next fall's apples came in. Judging the fire and the exact moment it was done took years of experience and a strong arm. Store shelves lined with jars ended the kettle days for most. Now the copper kettles hang cold in barns, and the slow communal art of apple butter survives mostly at fall festivals. Number 6. Cooking off sorghum molasses was the sweetest and most demanding harvest of the mountain year. Families grew tall cane sorghum, and when it ripened, the stalks were stripped, cut, and fed through a mule-powered mill that squeezed out the green juice. That juice was boiled for hours in a long metal pan over a roaring fire, the cook skimming off the green foam and working the syrup down the pan as it thickened until it turned into dark amber molasses. It was exacting work, for syrup pulled too soon was thin and watery, and cooked too long, it scorched and turned bitter in an instant. A skilled molasses maker was respected across the whole community, sent for every fall to work the boil. Corn syrup and cheap sugar made the labor seem foolish, and the mills fell silent. Today, only a scattering of makers keep the craft, and true mountain molasses grows harder to find each year. Number 5. Blacksmithing was the beating heart of every mountain community, the skill that kept a whole settlement running. Before hardware came in a truck, the smith made and mended nearly everything of iron, horseshoes, plow points, hinges, nails, knives, chains, and the tools every other trade depended on. He worked the coal fire with a great bellows until the iron glowed cherry red, then hammered it on the anvil, the ring of steel on steel carrying across the valley from dawn to dark. Knowing the exact color of the heat, when to quench and when to work, took a lifetime at the forge, an apprenticeship measured in years and burns. The smith could fix what broke and forge what was needed, and no farm could function without one nearby. Factory-made tools and welded steel made the village smith unnecessary. Now the anvil sits silent, and the deep knowledge of fire and iron survives among a few artisans, keeping an ancient trade alive. Number 4. Hewing logs and raising a cabin. Put a roof over a mountain family, built entirely from the trees on their own land. A man felled straight timber, then squared each log by hand with a broad axe, a dangerous, exacting craft that shaped a round tree into a flat-sided beam by eye alone. The corners were notched, saddle, dovetail, or V, so the logs locked together tight without a single nail, the whole weight of the house holding itself together. The gaps were chinked with mud, moss, and split wood against the winter wind. A cabin raising drew the whole community, the walls going up in a day of shouting, lifting, and shared dinner, a house standing that would shelter 3 generations. Reading timber and cutting a true notch took years to learn. Sawmills and framing lumber ended the age of the broadaxe. Today, the old hewn cabins lean and gray in the woods, monuments to a skill almost no one still holds. Number 3. Grinding meal at the watermill turned corn into a family's daily bread. Corn was the staff of mountain life, and nearly every meal leaned on cornbread, mush, or grits. But the hard kernels had to be ground first. Along the creek stood the grist mills, great stone wheels turned by water, and the miller who ran one held a place of quiet importance, taking his pay as a toll of meal from every sack he ground. Setting the stones just right, close enough for fine meal, but not so close they scorched it, was a craft learned over a lifetime of listening to the grind. Families also made hominy at home, soaking corn in lye water to slip the hulls, another patient skill. Bagged cornmeal from the store, and the closing of the old mills ended it all. Now the mill wheels stand still, moss-covered beside their silent creaks, and the miller's careful knowledge has passed into memory. Number 2. Old-time fiddling and ballad singing carried the soul of the mountains, a skill that took a lifetime to master and left no written record. Music was the mountain family's own entertainment, made on the porch and at the dance, and the fiddle was king. A player learned by ear, sitting at the knee of an older musician, catching the tunes note by crooked note. Songs with names like Sally Gooden and Soldier's Joy passed down for 200 years without ever being written on paper. The ballads were older still, long story songs carried across the ocean from Britain and Ireland and kept alive in these hollows longer than anywhere on earth, sung without accompaniment by grandmothers who knew every mournful verse. When a musician died with tunes only in his head, those tunes could die with him. Radio, records, and television gave folks other music. Now the old ballads fade, and each passing fiddler takes a little more of the mountain's true voice away. Number 1, Granny Doctoring, the healing knowledge of the mountain herb women, crowns this list as the skill that mountain folk trusted with their very lives. In hollows where the nearest doctor was a full day's ride away, the granny woman was midwife, nurse, and pharmacist all in one, and every community had one. She gathered her medicines from the woods and fields, boneset for fever, sassafras to thin the blood in spring, mullein and horehound for a cough, willow bark for pain, yellow root for a sore throat, each plant picked at the right season and prepared just so. She could deliver a baby by lamplight, set a broken bone, dress a wound, and comfort the dying, and she asked little or nothing in return. This knowledge was vast and precise, learned over a lifetime and passed by word of mouth from one woman to the next, never written down. Modern medicine and the drugstore made the granny woman seem like superstition, yet much of what she knew is only now being rediscovered by science, and most of it died with her, unwritten, in the quiet of the hills. These 25 skills were never written in any book. They lived in the hands and memories of people who learned them the hard way, because their survival depended on it. Every skill that fades takes a little of that self-reliance, that patience, and that quiet mountain pride with it. Somewhere, a few stubborn souls still split white oak, still churn butter, still know which root brings down a fever. If your own people came from these hills, some of this knowledge may be sitting quietly in your family, waiting to be asked about before it's too late. Ask the old-timers while you still can. Once they're gone, so is everything they never wrote down.